All right. So I will talk essentially the same about the same topic as last video, but I think it's quite an important topic, and it's good to cover again. I think I'll focus on one particular part of it. I think in the previous video maybe I talked about too many things at once. In this video, I will talk about estrangement. So this is a feeling that I imagine is pretty universal, where you're feeling very, very alone. You feel estranged. And specifically the moments I think about that are relevant to how I'm thinking at the moment is times where, for some reason or another, I've gotten convinced of, doing the right things. You have to do this and this and this, and things will go well. And, I tried that. I did those things. And in a way, it did go well. I remember there was one particular phase where I was doing, you know, absolutely everything correctly for a good period of time. And I was thinking, man, I feel so lucky that this is actually happening. I'm so glad that, I'm doing this and all this stuff is getting done and I'm not getting sidetracked. But then I was able to do this for one term, but then at the end of the term, it should all look really positive, right? It should look like progress has really been made because I'm just at the very start of doing all the correct things. So, you know, that's where you're going to get the biggest returns. But at the end of the term, I was, I don't know, I felt, I guess, a bit deceived. It was cool, I guess, it was nice, but I was sort of back to square one. It didn't really feel different. And it did feel kind of lonely. I kind of have this sense of estrangement. This sense that, I'm doing, I guess, like a lot of external things. Also, external things that look like they're internal. Journaling, doing emotional processing, all these sorts of things. But there's a very, action-oriented attitude that I guess in a way abandons yourself. And I don't know, you're working for this ideal. The ideal does give back. I, the feeling, at least this was the case for me, was that it wasn't ultimately satisfying. It has a sense of this is just your thing, or this is conditional, or this might go out, or you don't really have like a personal connection, a personal relationship with it. And there's this, and this might not be the intuition of everyone, but why would it be that if I don't do the correct things, I'm suddenly unworthy? So this is something I've touched upon in the last video already. And then, the next step is to say, well, okay, what is very personal and what is it that's always there? And that's you, of course. And spiritual teachers will uh, recommend that that is where you should look. Forget about everything else and look into yourself. Know thyself, etc., etc. I guess the sticking point, the real issue, is that when you do stick with yourself, it's okay. Anything external is not never going to work. Just by the fact that it is external and conditional and something that you work towards, that makes it something that when you get it, for the time that you get it, it'll actually not be satisfying. So the only hope that you have is in yourself. Oof, but the issue is that you look into yourself and it's not great. You don't immediately get the satisfaction. If it was, always and already, but you still have a problem, you still feel dissatisfied, that is a real bad news. Your only hope seems to have completely failed. Now, of course, what they say and what seems to be the case is that it's not that it is not there, it's that there's obstructions to it. And the whole idea is to get past those obstructions. One particular way that they emphasize is the know thyself way, understanding who you are. Maybe that's good. I think. No, I could say that being important, but I don't think it's actually something that is sufficient by itself. And it's possible that just the types of people, because being enlightened is very rare, the types of people that get there are of a very particular kind. They get there in a very particular kind of way that, has this kind of flavor. But this is not something that is generally useful. I'm not quite sure how true that is, but for me, I don't feel particularly confused about it. But any sort of internal attitude I would have would be instrumental, because there are some things that are too bad, some things that I cannot tolerate, some things that I really want. And I am totally fine in buying into fictions and stories in order to at least seemingly get closer or further away from these external things. And, the obstructions and all that thing, going into the details of what that is, different discussion. One particular thing I wanted to focus on is this very, very sneaky tendency that I think is very important to catch, which there's a way in which being internal is like unstable. I'm not sure quite, it is not quite correct, but at least for most people it's unstable, because you have just the idea of like, okay, let me come back to myself, and it seems to sort of work. But then as you fall back out or you focus on other things and you continuously hone in on this idea of coming back to yourself and that specific phrase, what then happens is that the thing that helped you go more internal becomes an external thing, and it becomes abstracted in such a way that now you've forgotten the internal thing. So there's this whole process of abstraction which sneaks up on you because it's like a method could work at the start and be very honest, but then as it gets abstracted, it loses its value. And so one has to be, and this is, I don't have great advice on specifically how it works to be, like, to avoid that, to be consistently having the right direction. But I guess, something like honesty or earnestness is something that we understand very well, and is definitely in the right direction. Anyway, that's it. I might have repeated myself too much from last video, but I guess it's alright. I could have also made the video a bit shorter. Anyway, take care.